Chuck Schumer has been very vocal about Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, criticizing it numerous times. But what if I told you that Chuck Schumer and other Senate Democrats can actually stop Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, but are refusing to do so? Didn't mean to bring Morpheus into this, but it's one of those what if I told you moments. Chuck Schumer went after Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill multiple times. Here's a couple examples.
People with this bill, tens of millions who would otherwise qualify for health care benefits, would be mummified in new red tape. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's the intention of the Republican bill. And we all know one thing. Donald Trump is just lying about the bill. Lying about the bill. Well, here's the We Are All Going to Die Act. It says nearly 14 million. It's 16 million, getting closer to 16 million, according to CBO's numbers, we've been told. 11 million people cut off from affordable food, tax cuts for billionaires. We're all going to die, Bill. And that shows the callousness of this Republican majority in the House and the Republican majority in the Senate. People with this bill.
All right, that's one example there. He called it, the We Are All Going to, Die bill. Again, trying to convince the American people that he is really out there ready to take on Donald Trump and just knock this bill down, knock it down, knock it down. You've been sold on this image that there's nothing that can be done. You have been told by even Hakeem Jeffries made it very clear to the public, there's nothing we can do. But it was all lies, all lies. Another one.
Donald Trump is selling snake oil to Republican senators when it comes to health care. He says no one will lose benefits. That's a lie. He says hospitals won't close. That's a lie. He says no one will be laid off. That's a lie. It will lay off hundreds of thousands of people, close rural hospitals, and take health care away from close to 16 million people. This is a pile of garbage. I say to the American people, don't believe Donald Trump's snake oil. He's screwing you to help his billionaire friends.
And I would say, when you hear this article I'm about to read to you, don't fall for Chuck Schumer's snake oil either. When I say it's the same team, I think you're going to see why. It's the same team, the same team. Now, the Democratic Party, again, pretends to be opposition to the Republican Party, but when they have the opportunity to come in and stop something, they don't do it. Did you know they could stop this bill? Why aren't they telling you this? Check this out. Senate Democrats have been handed a tool to stop the big, beautiful bill. Thanks to a Republican vote to stop California from setting its own auto emissions, Democrat can challenge virtually any Trump administrative action and eat up time on the Senate floor. How many of you knew about this? They can eat up time on the Senate floor. Nobody's telling you this. Hakeem Jeffries isn't telling you this. Chuck Schumer isn't telling you this. It's almost as if they want it to happen so they can run on it, run against it in the midterms and in 2028. Let's go on. And you see there's Chuck Schumer and there's Warnock. There they are pretending. Let's get into this. It's refreshing in a way that we no longer have to spend time thinking about the Senate parliamentarian. Republicans put that to bed last week by overruling the parliamentarian over whether a Congressional Review Act resolution can nullify the EPA's waiver, allowing California to set its own air pollution standards on vehicles. So Cali was given authority in a carve out to the Clean Air Act in 1970 to set higher emission standards than the national rules, with the EPA granting waivers more than 100 times. The state was prepared to use its latest waiver to effectively ban gas-powered auto sales by 2035. But the Senate voted 41 to 44 last week to cancel that waiver, as well as two other waivers to tighten emission rules on diesel trucks and allow zero-emission trucks on the road. The House had already voted for the resolution, so it can now be signed by Donald Trump. Only executive branch agency rules can be overturned by a CRA resolution, and one within 60-day legislative days after being presented to Congress in an up or down vote that avoids the Senate filibuster. The Senate parliamentarian joining the auditors at the Government Accountability Office said the EPA waivers were not rules as defined by the CRA and therefore couldn't be put into a resolution. Senator Mike Lee of Utah, in communication he sent last Congress about these very EPA waivers, agreed that the federal preemption waivers cannot be reviewed under the Congressional Review Act. Yet, Senate Republicans said, tough, we're doing it anyway, and Lee voted for them. So, let's move forward right here. California already announced that it will sue to maintain its waiver, charging that the Senate had no authority to overturn it. But the Senate operates largely on precedent. And now that the parliamentarian has been discarded on this point, virtually any action the executive branch takes could be construed as a rule and therefore subject to fast-track congressional review. For this reason, Democrats could subject the Senate to time-consuming resolution votes repeatedly to such a degree that the Senate would not have any time to do anything else for the rest of this session of Congress. So, in other words, this is called being strategic. As much as we hear the Democrats talk about it's strategy, we're following strategy, this is actually being strategic and it's smart, but they don't always do what's smart. They don't want to do this. They're not willing to step out into the fringe, so to speak, right? Why would we do that? That's not the way we usually do things. So they would rather the American people still struggle under the consequences of that bill instead of stepping out of their comfort zone and doing something different. Let's go on a little bit more here. In other words, where did I stop at? In other words, Democrats could respond to the waiver vote by paralyzing the Senate and stopping the giant Trump tax bill from ever reaching the floor. Once again, folks, can we say it again? Democrats could subject the Senate to time-consuming resolution votes to such a degree that the Senate would not have time to do anything else for the rest of the session in Congress. In other words, Democrats could respond to the waiver by paralyzing the Senate and stopping the giant Trump tax bill from ever reaching the floor. And the Democratic Party is never willing to use other tools. You know, you got those tools in your tool shed, and it's like maybe you have like your hammer and your pliers. And these are the tools that you use all the time, but you have a tool shed. You have all these other tools that you can pull from and you can utilize, but you choose not to. That's what the Democratic Party is doing. That's what the Senate Democrats right now are doing. When I tell you it's all political, it's all political. You see, if they jump in, and this is their wrong thinking, right? Like, if they jump in and were to stop this, I think that would increase support for the Democratic Party. There are a number of people that are upset with the Democrats right now because they said they're not trying to fight for us. They're just, just chilling, like we can't do anything, right? Which they can, and I'm showing you how they can. And so they think by doing that would hurt the party. I would say that probably would help them more than it would. That would help them, not hurt them. What hurts them is saying they can't do anything. And you got this article that shows they can. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to fix it. They want to keep it as is so they can run on it. Same team. Listen to how this professor explained it. GSU assistant professor and former House Oversight Committee staffer Todd Phillips laid this out in a prospect piece earlier this month. Any 30 senators can force a CRA resolution onto the floor with a required 10 hours of debate time. So Democrats don't want to do anything by force. Remember, we went back to the whole force the vote moment? Force the vote for Medicare for all against Nancy Pelosi for speaker, fight for healthcare. And we see how everybody chickened out. Everybody, I want to do it. I'm worried about my career. Everybody chickened out, didn't want to do it. This is another force activity that they can do, but they refuse to do it. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, do they know about it? Oh, they know about it. We'll get to that part as well, right? Any 30 senators can force a CRA resolution onto the floor with a required 10 hours of debate time. These resolutions would need the president's signature, and nearly all of them wouldn't even get the Republican votes necessary to pass the Senate. But according to the Senate procedure, they have to be dealt with if enough senators force them onto the floor. They must be debated and voted upon ahead of other Senate business if brought up for consideration. This means that Democrats can tie up the Senate floor for upwards of 10 hours with any single CRA resolution. Knock on the door. Bernie Sanders, you're in the Senate. You don't know about this? I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does know. You don't know about this? Another thing that they can do, but oh no, that's too radical. We don't want to do that. Let's just run on it in midterms. Democrats could go back in time to invalidate prior agency actions. That's another thing they can do. Here it goes when we get into Medicaid. The Republican vote on EPA waivers just widely expanded the options for a CRA resolution. If the Department of Health and Human Services grant a state waiver for changes to its Medicaid program, or if the U.S. Department of Agriculture does the same for SNAP, Democrats could write resolutions to overturn such waivers. Did you know that they could do that? Did you know that the Democratic Party, that they can write resolutions to overturn those? Why aren't they writing? Why aren't they writing? I mean, they're so busy going on to this show and that show and going to these fancy dinners that are like $1,000 plate dinners and, writing books, and they don't have time to write a resolution. Oh my God. Right? Dwayne says the Democrats take us all for fools. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. If the Federal Communications Commission issues a broadcast license, or the Justice Department approves a merger, or if Securities and Exchange Commission decides to defer a prosecution in an investor protection case, Senate Democrats could challenge it. If the Department of Defense inks a contract for new weapon systems or any other item of procurement, they could challenge that too. Any decision to redirect funds, change the terms of grants, or make practically any decision at all could, under the theory just enshrined into the Senate rule book by Republicans, lead to a CRA resolution and a 10-hour debate. Once again, tools in the shed that are not being used. Just like they didn't want to force the vote for Medicare for all. They passed on forcing the vote. Then next thing we know, we sit up here and we watch members of the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party actually take that strategy and use it towards their benefit and force the vote and say, no, we're not voting for Kevin McCarthy unless we get some damn demands. The Republican Party capitalizes on the Democratic Party mistakes. Like I said, it's the same team. You out there on the court and you fouling. I'm like, okay, you fouling. Let me see how I can capitalize on that. one on the bench, one on the floor. Now, you're probably wondering, do they know about this? So let's go to the very bottom here, this part here. This is where Chuck Schumer comes in. Importantly, Senate Democrats already know this. In a letter sent to Senate Majority Leader John Thune before the EPA waiver vote, and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and several others made this very point. If the current Senate majority were to open this door, the CRA could be weaponized to retroactively invalidate decades of agency actions and effectively hijack the Senate floor. So not only do they know, Chuck Schumer knows personally. He was contacted about this. It's all a game. Now, more and more people are starting to wake up to this and see that it's more a game. I'm hearing more people, not on social media, but on the ground. I'm hearing from more people that are just like, it's almost as if the Democrats want the Republicans to screw everything up so that they can just like run on it, but then they don't do anything for us either. They just give us crumbs to just keep us quiet for a bit. Because it's the same team. Chuck Schumer knew. And I think I'll put the link to this article in the chat. Because I really want more people to know about this. So you guys can share this article with other people as well. But yeah, man, Senate Democrats have been handed a tool to stop the big, beautiful bill, and they refuse to act. It's almost if they don't give a damn. Same team. Let's go to the comments in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing the link to that article. You guys can pass it on to your comrades. Everybody needs to see that. Hey, hey, hey. All right. Thank you, Mike. Mike says, I would say that Chuck's opposition is performative. There you go. And thank you, EMK. Let's normalize calling those who take APAC, Kufi, and other blood money what they are, traitors. Traitors do not represent us. Time to stand up. When I move, you move. Just like that. Move, you move. Just like that. Stand up. Stand up. A little bit of Ludacris there for you guys. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Ludacris songs. Some people, I think, mainly know him now as an actor. But Ludacris was like, I like Ludacris songs back in the day. Stand up. Move, you move. Okay. And, and this is the important part. Then people wonder why, like, the reason why you have so many people out in the streets and stuff like that, part of that is because, like, this is what happens. Like, eventually, people will, have you seen the movie The Purge? I mean, think about it. But I also feel like billionaires want that to happen. I feel like billionaires want us to just totally collapse. Because there are some that believe that out of chaos will come peace and order. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.